Here we go.
Hey, Arnold!
Today, we're going to be taking a look back at an episode from one of my absolute favorite cartoons, Hey Arnold. A cartoon not afraid to talk about the serious real-world problems, whether it be neglect, addiction, depression, or even alcoholism.
Therapy? This never would have happened to Olga. Look, is this gonna cost me anything? Good. Hold it right there, Missy. Report to the trophy room pronto. We didn't have therapy when I was a kid.
That's obvious, Bob.
I don't want you blabbing to some school shrink. We Patakis don't talk about things. We sweep them under the rug.
Some things are best swept under the rug, Helga.
This never would have happened to Olga.
I know, Pete.
So when we see the occasional episode about a haunted train or a headless cabbie, their scare factor hits all the harder. And for this video, I really wanted to talk about an episode that brought the scare factor, but also one that hasn't been talked about a million times before. After loading up Paramount Plus and searching through the episodes, I set my sights on an episode I've surprisingly never seen covered. So today, we're going to be talking about the season 1 episode, Wheezin. The episode starts with Arnold and his friends at the pier just hanging out and playing games. Then we see the classic Helga fantasizing over Arnold's scene.
It's him! Oh, it is my love! Spending a lost Saturday on the river's edge. How I long to share your reverie.
Arnold's sitting at the end of the pier when Sid and Gerald walk up and ask him what he's looking at. He says he's looking at Elk Island and he wonders why no one ever goes there. Gerald says for one thing, it's haunted.
The haunted caves of Wheezin. In the time of Prohibition, on the island they called Elk, to live the gangster so ruthless that his name inspired terror all up and down the Skookumchuck River. They called him Wheezin.
He says Ed got his name for the wheezing he made just before he came up behind you and wrung your neck. He says Wheezin Ed buried his treasure in the caves of Elk Island and nobody has ever found it. And everybody who's tried has come to an awful end, too hideous to be spoken of. Helga blurts out what a hooey and then says the island isn't haunted and that there is no Wheezin Ed. Right after she says that, Sheena's uncle Earl comes paddling up on his boat. He says there is treasure on the island, and he shows a coin that he found in the caves. He says he'll take everybody there for just $1 each. And at the very same time, 2 crooks named Vic and Maury, who we've seen in previous episodes, arrive on Elk Island. They're talking about how they're happy they moved their counterfeit penny operation to Elk Island because nobody disturbs them, thanks to the story of Wheezin Ed.
Yeah, and setting it up on Elk Island was a stroke of pure genius.
No one will ever come snooping around here thanks to that Wheezin Ed baloney.
Yeah, Wheezin Ed, what a laugh.
Earl drops everyone off at the island and says he'll see them when the sun sets. Rhonda finds a coin on the ground and then the kids go into the caves. They see multiple passageways, so Helga decides everyone should split up. Sid goes with Rhonda, Phoebe goes with Gerald, and Helga with Arnold. Harold, being clearly terrified, stays outside to guard the entrance.
Why can't I go with Harold?
Cause I gotta guard outside, that's why. On account of I'm bravest.
Arnold decides to leave a trail of jelly beans, just in case they can't find their way back, but as soon as Harold notices them, he starts to eat them. Meanwhile, Vic and Maury are somewhere in the cave forging pennies. Maury says that they've spent $900 on copper and suggests they forge dimes instead. Arnold and Helga begin to argue and Arnold says that they should just split up. Arnold walks alone down a different passage. Helga, being upset with herself, decides to follow Arnold and confess her love once and for all. But just before she's about to tell him, Arnold says that he hears something. They hear a quiet wheezing. Helga starts to scream and jumps right into Arnold's arms. Alarmed by the screaming, everybody in the cave rushes to them. But fortunately for them, it turned out just to be Brainy.
Something.
I do wonder though, like, how did Brainy get there? Was it Earl, or does he just hang out there by himself all the time? Relieved that it wasn't Wheezin Ed, but also disappointed that there's no Wheezin Ed, they decide to leave the cave. But as they're walking out, they suddenly fall into a deep hole, and they land straight on the forged counterfeit pennies. They start to celebrate, thinking that they found the treasure of Wheezin Ed, but then Gerald notices that all the coins just look like pennies. Badly forged pennies.
You know, Arnold, these look a lot like pennies, only not made as good.
What? You mean counterfeit pennies?
Yeah.
But who'd be stupid enough to do a thing like make counterfeit pennies?
Hey, you punks! What do you think you're doing?
It's Wheezin Ed! It's some other guy!
Vic and Maury return and start chasing them out of the cave. They manage to get to the exit, and Vic and Maury are immediately arrested by the police.
Hey, freeze!
You two are under arrest for the running of an illegal counterfeit penny operation.
Nuts.
How'd you find us?
The police learned about the counterfeit pennies when Earl tried to use the penny he found earlier to tip a waitress. On the way back to the city, the kids talk about how bummed they are that there actually isn't a Wheezin Ed. But then...
I guess there really isn't a Wheezin Ed.
I don't know, Gerald. Just don't know.
And that's where the episode ends. I absolutely loved this episode, but it left so many questions unanswered. For one, in the beginning we see a newspaper that reads the Elk Island Times. Why would the island the size of a house need its own newspaper? And what about the sketches that Arnold was looking at? Is that Brainy and a dog? Did Brainy make these? Did Arnold make these? Or is this just a huge coincidence that it looks exactly like him? Oh, and also, did they just leave Brainy on the island? And what about Vic and Maury's dog? I need answers. Maybe this isn't the scariest episode of Arnold, but it's definitely a good spooky one. Come to think of it, I don't think Arnold has a bad episode. Well, except that Arnold betrays Iggy episode. Ugh, man, I hated that episode. But I think that's going to do it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you're feeling up to it, hey, why not subscribe? My goal is to get to 500 subs by the end of the year, so if you want to help me out, please subscribe and like. Liking really helps push the video, so I'd really appreciate it. With all that being said, thank you for watching, and until next time, peace.
It's Wheezin